My name is Joel Chipkar. I'm the spokesperson for the Falun Dafa Association of Canada. Canada is facing unprecedented transnational repression and foreign interference from Communist China, and it's happening in plain sight. This spring, hoax bomb threats traced to China forced the cancellation of 6 Shenyang performances in Toronto's Four Seasons Centre. Similar threats struck venues in Mississauga and Vancouver. The sender later mocked that Canada cannot be taken seriously and claimed allegiance to my motherland's Communist Party. In Vancouver, Chinese consulate officials urged civic theatre officials to cancel Shenyang performances. And in Ontario, Mayor Michael Prue of Amherstburg publicly condemned a letter from the Toronto consulate pressuring him not to support Falun Gong. These are not isolated incidents. They're part of a coordinated global campaign of Communist Party-directed transnational repression combining disinformation, diplomatic pressure, lawfare, and hoax bomb threats. Over 20 such threats have been recorded in Canada alone, part of more than 270 worldwide, ranging from bomb threats against venues and Parliament Hill to attacking Canadian politicians. Every single one carried the same demand: cancel Shenyang and silence Falun Gong. Why? Because Shenyang celebrates 5,000 years of Chinese civilization before communism and tells an inconvenient truth: the horrific human rights crimes against Falun Gong that have lasted for over 27 years. Mass imprisonment, torture, forced labor, and forced organ harvesting. Today, we call on Canada to act. We urge Minister Anand to raise 3 critical demands with Wang Yi: end transnational repression on Canadian soil, end the persecution of Falun Gong in China, and release 9 family members of Canadians currently imprisoned in China for nothing more than practicing their faith. This is not just a Falun Gong issue. When intimidation from a foreign regime determines what Canadians can say or see, the freedom of every Canadian is at threat. Minister Wong is here, and Canada must speak out and say enough is enough.
Thank you. My name is David Matus. I'm an international human rights lawyer based in Winnipeg. Falun Gong is a set of exercises with a spiritual foundation begun in 1992. Though the spiritual teachings of Falun Gong have no political content, the practice by 1999 had become so popular that the Chinese Communist Party feared for its ideological supremacy and ordered all Chinese practitioners to stop the practice. This order led to protests. Those protests heightened the fears of the party and led to active suppression of the practice. Practitioners fled China. The practice of Falun Gong and protest against its suppression spread globally. These foreign protests became so widespread and persistent that, according to Cheng Yonglin in 225, a defector from the Chinese consulate in Australia, the Falun Gong issue is the priority of the consulate's job. According to Chinese President Xi Jinping in a leaked address to a commission of the Chinese Communist Party in 2022, Falun Gong is the party's most prominent opposition force. Shenyang Performing Arts was founded in New York State in August 2006 by Falun Gong volunteers. The performances illustrate Chinese traditional dance, Falun Gong spirituality, and Chinese Communist Party persecution of Falun Gong, including forced organ harvesting. The dance company performances have become immensely popular, having been seen since the inception of the company by millions globally. A 2010 leaked Chinese Communist Party internal notice stated, "Combating and suppressing the performances of the Shenyang show is an important part of the current struggle against Falun Gong." We have seen this attempt at suppression in Canada, as you've just heard. Cultural interaction between China and Canada entrusted to the Chinese diplomatic mission and consulates in Canada by the government of China, including efforts to have Canadian venues deny their premises to the Shenyang Performing Arts, has to be conducted through Global Affairs Canada. This is a legal requirement set out on the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and a Canadian statute, the Foreign Missions and International Organizations Act. Any direct approach by the Chinese embassy or consulates in Canada to Canadian cultural venues to address cultural matters in general and the denial of venues to Shenyang in particular violates both international treaty law and Canadian statute law. The Canadian government should inform the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs, Wang Yi, during his visit, as well as the Chinese embassy and consulates directly of this legal reality. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joel Etienne. I'm a Toronto-based human rights lawyer. This morning, colleagues of mine and myself appeared before the Heritage Committee of Parliament, and we had some recommendations in relation to the foreign interference that's been happening here in the country. And what we recommended to the Parliamentary Committee is the following, which I will repeat now for your benefit. Shen Yun is deeply connected to Canadians' rights to present lawful, artistic, and cultural expression, free from foreign state intimidation. Members of the Canadian Falun Dafa community who help present Shen Yun are entitled under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and Canadian law to participate fully in Canadian cultural life without fear, intimidation, or foreign interference. Our recommendations were the following. Canadian Heritage should establish federal guidance and response protocols for publicly funded cultural institutions facing foreign state intimidation. Rental decisions under such circumstances should not be treated as private business matters. Number 2, publicly funded venues and crown corporations, including the NAC in Ottawa, should receive training on foreign interference, transnational repression, and diplomatic pressure tactics, and the NAC should be directed to offer Shen Yun dates to perform in Ottawa. Number 3, public security agencies. The RCMP, CSC, CSIS, and local police should assess and investigate the broader pattern of foreign interference targeting the cultural sector, including the threats and intimidation campaigns, not merely as isolated public order incidents, and enforce relevant provisions of existing legislations and treaties. Number 4, Global Affairs Canada should review whether consular pressure on Canadian venues violated the Vienna Convention, and establish transparency mechanisms for diplomatic communications directed towards Canadian artistic programming. So this is what we asked this morning, and we hope that Parliament will deliver, because this transnational campaign of foreign interference, which has ramifications in Canada, has become quite intolerable for Canadians.
Good afternoon. I'm Kelly. My mother was sentenced to 4 years for practicing Falun Gong in China. Now she's 81 years old and has been in prison for 3 years and 4 months already. As a practitioner of Falun Gong, I call on the Canadian government helping to stop persecuting of Falun Gong in China. Also, call for releasing my mother, releasing all imprisoned practitioners of Falun Gong in China. Also, as a Canadian citizen, I call on the Canadian leaders to tell Beijing to stop interfering in Canada and the end of transnational repression in Canada. Thank you.
My name is Li Zhihe. I live in Toronto. And my brother Li Zhong is suffering in a Chinese prison for practicing Falun Gong. In July 2023, Li Zhong was abducted from our family home by communist Chinese police. Simply for having Falun Gong information on his phone, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison, following an earlier 3-year imprisonment for the same faith. For nearly 3 years, every family visit to Li Zhong has been denied. We know nothing of his safety or health. That silence is its own form of torture. My parents are over 80. This cruelty is breaking them. I know these brutalities firsthand. I survived 3.5 years of illegal imprisonment in China and nearly lost my life to torture. Canada helped me to reach freedom here, but Beijing now, its repression has followed us to Canada. Today, as Wang Yi visited Ottawa, I called on Canadian leaders demand immediate and unconditional release of my brother Li Zhonghe and all imprisoned Falun Gong practitioners. Send Beijing a clear message. Transnational repression will not be tolerated in Canada. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, I was actually. If I can ask specifically, Carly, do you know what condition your mother is in right now? You said that she's 81 years old. When was the last time you spoke to her?
No, never say. I haven't spoken to her 3 years and 4 months. I cannot phone her.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, sir. Li Chi.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind going to the mic as well. For the two of you, you mentioned, Li Chi, that you mentioned that your brother was abducted by Chinese police.
Yes.
The RCMP signed an agreement with MPS, Chinese police, a cooperation agreement to allow possible cooperative investigations here on Canadian soil. We don't know what's in the agreement. Does that worry you?
Yes, absolutely.
Why does that worry you?
Talk on the mic.
To me, that's kind of coordinating. It's very dangerous to let Chinese police system to interfere Canada affairs. So persecution of Falun Gong in China has been going on for so many years. Now we already feel threatened in many ways. The Chinese repression follow us to Canada. So if the two systems, Canadian police system, Canadian police system, and Chinese Canadian system, work together, it's possible, it's likely to happen that the persecution was introduced further to Canada. That's I got freedom here, but I will feel threatened for my safety. I think that should not happen.
Do you feel safer? This RCMP agreement, this security agreement, has been in place for more than a decade. Prime Minister Carney says it's a document that is classified because there are security details and it will give out operational information. So it is government policy not to reveal what is in that agreement. I'm interested to know, would you like to see what's in the agreement? And I'm interested in getting a legal view on it as well.
I did not get the...
I've had to deal with that issue because I've had some clients who've been here in Canada making refugee claims, and that agreement has come up. It's problematic. It shouldn't be there. The Chinese government threatens people in Canada saying, come back voluntarily or we'll impose this or that on your relatives back home. The charges are not really vetted. I mean, they make basically the legal system in China is under the control of the Communist Party. I mean, not just the prosecutors, but the investigators, the police, the judges, and so you get charges that are basically politically motivated, and the agreement is supposedly based on an assumption that there's criminality in China and there should be cooperation. But in reality, what you're seeing is a political system that's operating to go after its enemies and protect its friends. And so Canada should have no part of it. And I would say there's a problem also with Interpol because if you look at what happens with Interpol, there's a huge number of Chinese requests, some public, some private, and they have the same political dynamic behind them and the same lack of rule of law behind them as the request of the Canadian government. And as you may be aware, there's this NGO called Safeguard Defenders that has identified police stations, Chinese police stations in Canada. And so this is an aspect of foreign interference, transnational oppression, with which the Canadian government should be combating it, not cooperating with it.
What does it show you?
Would you mind if I also answer the question? While we don't know what the document says, what I do know is how it is practiced, because I've actually had specific cases where Canadian authorities worked hand in hand with the military police service of China. And what that actually meant was Canadian police officers in Chinese gulags interviewing Chinese citizens who were basically under torture and mistreated in Chinese jails. So we had Canadian police officers working in Chinese jails in that context with MPS officers. And conversely, what it also meant was we had boots on the ground. This is reported in mainstream media. This is why I can speak about it publicly, even if this was one of my cases, where we had military police service police officers investigating in Canada, working hand in hand with Canadian police officers. Obviously, how do these permissions happen? How does operationally speaking, how does this actually come into place? It comes into place because you have agreement sanctioning this type of joint partnership in policing, but what it becomes is joint partnership in human rights abuses and repression in Canada and in China, and that's a problem.
With the William Miker trial, it came out that there were at least 25 Canadian residents who were coerced to return to China under Project Fox Hunt. It came under, it was revealed that 3 Chinese police officers went missing during an exchange with the RCMP for several hours. And the RCMP liaison officer testified that he was concerned that they were involved in foreign interference, trying to coerce these people to go home. What does that show you, that in light of this type of information, that the Carney government would still sign or re-sign an MOU that was signed by his predecessor, Justin Trudeau?
Well, it shows that the state of interference, and bringing it back to the topic at hand today, which is obviously the transnational criminal interference that's resulted in Shenyun being targeted, the cancellations, the criminal behavior and actions to harm our performers and the patrons and Canadians involved. It shows us that the sphere of interference is extremely wide. It covers all aspects of Canadian life, and Canadian citizens don't enjoy the freedoms, both personally and in the community, that they should be able to hold. And what all of this requires, first and foremost, is a certain degree of transparency. It's an amazing, look at this, a citizen has a right to full disclosure from Canadian police when you're dealing in the Canadian courts. Yes? It's clear. It's a clear black letter law. But insofar as now the MPS or the CCP is involved, we don't have a right to know what they're doing to us here in this country and what that involvement is. It's a clear breach of charter law, and it creates 2 classes of citizenry: those who are interested or targeted or persecuted by the CCP, such as the most recent transnational campaign of harm against Shenyun, and those who the CCP is not interested in. And so it's not a way to live in this country to have 2 classes of Canadians.
Do you buy that argument from Carney then, that it is operational, it is classified, and it is information that needs to be top secret because it is in regards to security matters?
Well, no. I guess in law we can't buy it, because under our Charter of Rights we have a right to full disclosure, and we have a right to know what police officers can and can't do to us, whether they are foreign officers on Canadian soil working on behalf of a different country with Canadian permission, or whether or not we're dealing with Canadian police officers. So there is no, but by the way, what's very, very interesting is that diplomacy and diplomatic niceties are being used in so many ways to allow for foreign interference, and it allows for the contravention of our charter rights. For example, bringing it back to the Shenyun topic, and I'm particularly aggrieved by this because here you have 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids at the height of their performing abilities, who have to go, and they don't know before they go on stage. They're being harassed, bomb threats, cancel venues. It's unfair. Understanding that Shenyun is not foreign. Shenyun is Canadian, made by Canadian artists. A lot of our performers are Canadian citizens, born in Canada. In that context, you realize that, and I'll give you an easy analogy. Drug crime and the cartels, right? The drugs are made in overseas, they're smuggled into Canada, and the drug dealers deal with that in Canada. It's a whole conspiracy. It's criminal participation. It's a whole crime. Even if you haven't made the drugs and you're just involved in distribution, you are a criminal. Here you have the same types of activities. You have criminal activities that are sanctioned and protected by diplomatic immunity. And in the case of the Shenyun harassment, the bomb threats, that's illegal. It's a crime threats, the criminal harassment, mischief, etc. A whole slew of criminal activities. Some of that participation is coming obviously from overseas, but once it arrives here, it's the finality of the work is we believe exercised by the CCP's foreign service under the guise of diplomatic immunity. And here it is, you have all of this policing in aid of the military police service of the CCP. But again, you don't get access to it, you don't know it, you don't know the details of what it is that they do here under the guise of diplomatic immunity and international relations. It's an opaque way, it's an indirect way to contravene the rights of Canadians.
I wonder, I'm sorry, you've got me thinking about this. I had a client a couple of decades ago, it's all public, Lai Chong-sing, where the Chinese government sent some people over to basically intimidate him to come back. He refused. There was actually a diplomatic protest from the government of Canada about that at the time. They gave undertakings to get him back. The court said they weren't good enough, and they gave further undertakings, which the court accepted, and then they weren't respected, and the Canadian government couldn't do anything about it. In terms of the present agreement, I mean, sure, it should be made public, but the issue is, frankly, not public or private. The issue is whether it should be there at all. And I don't believe that simply making it public is going to resolve the issue. In principle, there shouldn't be cooperation with a state that doesn't have the rule of law and uses the criminal justice system basically to get after people that it's targeting politically, and not for criminal reasons. Thanks.
Carly and Mr. Lee, if you wouldn't mind, I have one more question for the two of you. Under the former government of Justin Trudeau, there was a foreign interference law that was passed. We're supposed to have a foreign registry, agent registry, which has not been implemented. Right now, we have a foreign interference commissioner who has been named. Do you feel safer now under Prime Minister Mark Carney, knowing what he's doing, than you did before?
I strongly support. I strongly support that the law should be implemented. Yeah, if the implementation is done, then I'll feel much safer.
Do you feel safer knowing that there is now more ties? There's a pursuit by the Carney government of warming economic ties. The Foreign Minister Wang Yi is coming. Do you feel safer?
No.
Why is that? Explain, please.
Actually, when we do, the business trade with China, we should not forget Canadian values. Human rights should not be forgotten. Because in China, human rights abuses continue, anti-humanity crimes continue. We should see clearly that Chinese Communist Party is hostile to humanity, and we should not just turn a deaf ear or a blind eye to what's happening in China just for what we can see, short-sighted, the interests for the country, but forget the long-term who we are, what Canada is, and simply just for shortcoming interest to get so much ties with China. We should be more clear and distinguish who is our real friend, who is actually the enemy behind.
Do you trust the RCMP to keep you safe if they have an agreement with Chinese police?
Can you say it again?
Because there is an agreement between the RCMP and Chinese police, do you feel confident Canadian police can keep you safe?
I doubt it. I hope that's not happening, to be honest. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe I was part of this Commission of Inquiry into Foreign Interference. The NGO Human Rights Action Group put together a human rights coalition which represented a number of diaspora communities, including the Falun Gong community, which got intervener status at this Commission of Inquiry. And we put in a lot of evidence about transnational repression directed against diaspora communities in Canada, including the Falun Gong community. The commissioner basically didn't deal with that issue, and she said so in a report, saying it goes beyond the mandate that she was dealing with. And what we're looking with the foreign interference legislation, which really hasn't been operationalized, is basically a system of registration. And it directs the foreign interference that's going to government, going to elections, but it doesn't deal with transnational repression against diaspora communities. And sure, there's a problem with the agreement. But the problem is beyond that, because we don't have a proper legal structure. We don't have a legal structure to deal with transnational repression. It's not even mentioned in the law. And the Falun Gong community and many other diaspora communities are victimized by it, and something needs to be done about it.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci. C'est ce qui conclut cette conférence de presse.